Julie.
Hi.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Dewey.
Oh, yeah. I can back up a little. Karen wants you to tell her some stories about when you were younger and
Oh
stuff.
my God, no.
Well, tell her about moving into this house. And you were like 8 months pregnant. Remember?
Yes. 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 That's the way it was. There's damn thing I could do about it.
Do you remember that first winter when you were here?
It snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed some more.
Yes,
That
it
I
did.
remember. When you get that kind of a snow, and it's a real wet snow, it's not a dry snow, and you just grin and bear it. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Even with a tiny new baby, all by yourself.
I made it.
Yeah.
You made it.
Do you remember what you paid for this house?
Yes, I think so. It was roughly $7,000.
Yeah. And the property? You bought the property first, right?
I think we paid $500 for it,
An acre of land.
for an acre.
And you
I
kept...
pay more than that in taxes on it now.
Yeah, yeah, you do. And where were you working? You were a bookkeeper, right?
How old do I remember? It's only, what, 45 years ago?
It's 59. But that's okay.
You went on a double date,
Well, we
and
did
Dad
double
was
date a
with
lot.
the other girl. And you were with some schmuck, as I remember.
And I dumped him.
You did, you
I
dumped him.
dumped him. I went to the movie.
You got rid of him.
I got rid of him.
Harriet dumped Dad,
And
right?
gave Dad your address so he could write to
And he
you.
wrote to me. And I answered the letter. And letter, and letter, and letter.
You guys wrote back and forth through all the way through the war.
Over 4 years.
Yeah. And then what happened?
When
Then,
he came back, he contacted me.
well, he came back to work in Salt Lake because that's where he'd had a job.
Yes.
When he was drafted
worked at the Tribune.
at the Tribune. So you were still in New York, and now he's out here in Salt Lake.
And then I was out here at Salt Lake.
You came out to visit. And what happened then?
We got married.
Where'd you go on your honeymoon?
We got in the car and just headed north.
Didn't you end up in Bear Lake? Didn't you
I
stay in
don't
a
know
cabin
whether it
at
was-
Bear Lake?
I was so green, Lindy, I didn't know if it was a swimming pool or what it was. I had no
Well,
idea.
wasn't it pretty, you're talking about that, wasn't it pretty strange to come, I mean, this had to feel like you were out in the wild, wild west.
You are so right.
Because you grew up in
The
In the
city.
east.
in New York City. How scary was it to get on a plane and fly out here to the Wild West with some guy
Well,
you'd
when
seen
you're
once?
in your young 20s, it didn't bother you a hell of a lot, you know.
You hadn't even seen this guy since that first double date, right?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I don't think you had. You'd just written to each other.
Well, that could be.
So you flew out here to see him.
Yes, I think I did.
And
Yeah.
a belief
And it was,
in
and
something
we
that's
meshed.
written.
Yeah.
You were married in August of 46.
Yep,
That's the
August
way it
2nd,
was.
1946.
A blue suit.
But
And it was belted.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a belted
I know
jacket?
the color of the dress, and I remember the dress. It was a pale blue.
And wasn't it a belted jacket?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe a size 5.
Oh, maybe. Grandma was probably
Maybe
more like a
was it
size 3.
Yeah.
Tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she
I was
tiny.
skinny then.
Tiny.
Ain't no skinny now, but I'm skinny then. And Edie helped me because
Survived the.
she
West.
showed me how to bottle fruit and all this kind of stuff that I thought, you don't go to the store and buy it in a jar. No, you don't. You make your own. And
You learned.
I did learn. They had a pig. And I was scared to death of that damned animal. But I didn't go near it. But I saw it close enough to know I didn't want to go near it. But it was a.
It'd get out, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it get out of
Yeah,
his,
he got out.
out of
You
his
know,
cage or whatever it was? He was
whatever it
gated
was.
or
Yeah,
something.
he was in.
Fencing or something.
I remember watching you take a broom and shoo him back into the garage and close
Well,
the
not
door.
into the garage, but into. I don't know.
No,
where
we
it
caught
was.
him in the garage. That was the best we could
Oh,
do.
well, that was the best
Uh-huh.
thing. Yeah.
You with your
we
broom,
had our
you were
ups and
very
downs
brave.
Catching the animal.
You were very brave with that broom. Yes.
Yeah, she always grabbed a broom. At Easter time, they'd have this big wooden box with a screen over the top of it, and they'd have little baby chicks. And they'd dye some of them green and some of them pink and some of them blue, and you know.
They were
And we
different
got
colors.
2 of them. Daddy
Daddy brought 'em.
Daddy
Yeah.
brought us home 2.
That was his chore.
Yeah, Daddy brought them, didn't he? He
Mhm.
brought us both
Yep.
one. And
And they were
outside.
cute little baby chicks, but
And
they
they were
grew up.
They were
meanest
really
sons of
tiny.
bitches you've ever seen. They bit ya.
Yeah, they did.
Sure, they were scared to death of you.
Oh. Daddy killed them, didn't he?
Yes, and we ate them.
Yeah, we ate them. Daddy killed
I
them.
don't
Yes, we did.
I
Yes,
don't
he.
know.
Yes, I have a vivid recollection.
I do too. Daddy
Yes.
killed them.
You
Yes.
stuck around. I exited.
Daddy killed them.
At one point in time, we had a dog we called Nellie,
Oh.
and she got pregnant, and she had puppies, and we
11.
put the puppies down there, and my dad brought home a huge cardboard box. It seemed like a huge cardboard box, and when the puppies were really little, it held them.
Poop and pee and puppy and
Oh, it was
there's nothing
wild
better
till we
for
got.
them puppy
We
breath.
had to get
They were
rid of
cute.
them. Yeah.
We
Where
did
would you store
peaches, we did
Downstairs
pears
on the
Peaches and pears and plums.
and cherries and
Cherries
pie
and
cherries.
And grapes, we put the grapes in.
Yeah,
And then
and made
we'd
grape
make
I don't
juice.
remember doing
Yeah,
grapes.
we'd make grape
but
juice
I-
out of it.
Yeah,
Yep,
But,
we did grape juice.
and apricots.
and apricots.
Yeah,
That's
lots of
right.
apricots.
Lots of cherries.
And we had all of that. And how did I learn? I learned from the neighbor who now lives in that house next here.
A big event in the 3 of us lives was the summer that we got polio. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. And we never got beyond this door.
We spent the whole summer in the house, didn't we? Well, it was a terrible disease that was just
And
sweeping
nobody
the country.
wanted
And
any. I wouldn't want my neighbor to get it,
sure,
so I kept my kids away from them.
sure.
And you know, that's the way you lived.
Did you ever have any idea how we got it?
I have no idea at all.
Who got sick first? Do you remember?
Well, you kids did. There was nothing. We had no medication or anything to give for the disease.
And you knew it was possible that we would be paralyzed.
Oh, yes, I did know. I did know all the time.
That
But,
must have been
but
horrifying.
fortunately, you weren't.
I was okay, and you were okay.
And I was okay. And Lindy had facial paralysis,
Yeah.
which, thank God, went away. Unless she's very, very tired, and then
Yeah.
it shows up.
And he really had to take care of the 3 of us, didn't he?
Yeah. Well,
Which is why I remember this in association with the raspberries, because he was so busy taking care of us, wasn't he, that he couldn't take care of the
berries.
raspberries. They got a disease and they all died. And we've never had raspberries there
Since.
again. Yeah. I mean, it was just a garden of delight because I loved raspberries, and we lost all the raspberries that summer.
Yeah.
She was already sick when she had you, wasn't she?
Yes.
And you were born at 2 pounds? 2 pounds. Yeah, the story was that they kept you in, now, a shoebox
A shoebox.
lined with absorbent cotton.
Oh, when
On-
I was
Yes, when you
Yeah.
were born, and they kept you warm on the
Um,
door
by the stove.
of the stove,
Yeah.
of the oven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that was the only way they had because we didn't have really good, adequate central heat, you know, even though it was an apartment.
You made it because you're so doggone feisty.
I know.
You're just a tough old bird. You
I
started
still
off feisty.
I still am.
And what did your father do?
He was what they call a salesman, a traveling salesman. And jewelry.
Jewelry.
Not high-class jewelry, but
Costume jewelry.
costume jewelry.
Really?
My
Bentheim.
grandmother was Grandma.
Grandma Ben.
Rosa.
Rosa. Rosa
Bentheim.
Bentheim.
Mm-hmm.
And his name was Nathan.
Your dad's name was Nathan.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
Yes.
how Nathan.
And that's how that Nathan and Nancy
yeah.
have come through the family. Yeah.
and
And your
my
mother's name was Julia.
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 She was Julia,
Julie.
Julia.
Mhm.
Julia.
And
And her maiden name was Meyer.
Meyer.
And his name was Bentheim. Okay. And she then
She was-
died of tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis.
And you were how old then?
Oh, I don't really remember, but I was certainly, I think I was preschool.
Yeah. So Mildred was already a teenager. She was
Well, she's
13 or 14.
She was 6 years older than us. She kept her weather eye out for me, and she had been told to do that, I'm sure. And poor kid, she had her hands full. But my mother went through high school and college. And then she married my father.
A master's degree in Greek from NYU, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your mother's family they were all Jewish. Were they
All Jewish.
devout? Were they
No, they were all Reformed.
Reformed?
Mm-hmm. My grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side lived right here. The ones that came later, a little bit later, were my father's people.
Mm.
They were Bentheims.
And they were Bentheims. And they lived just 2 doors away
Oh,
from
no kidding.
the other ones.
Oh, for heaven's
Yeah.
sake.
With
I
Aunt
spent
Julia
my summers with Aunt Lil.
Or with Aunt
My
Lil?
father had remarried the S of a B of the world, so they took me out of the house and brought me to my aunt's house to live for the summer for school.
You didn't get along with your stepmother.
Who could? I never knew anybody who could.
Well, your father then died when you were.
I was in my 20s. I moved in with Bill, yeah.
And you lived with
And
her.
I was old enough then. We were, you know, I worked for a living and I paid my board and that was it.
And then you married Mr. Glasgow. Your first husband.
Your first husband.
was named
Nice Jewish boy.
Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it was Glasgow. Yeah.
But you didn't stay
And
married, did
and
you,
I
Granny?
loved his mother. I only married him because he had such a nice mother.
Grandma.
Truth. That's the truth.
Just the adjustment from you coming from New York City and a culture, everybody you knew and associated with were Jewish, and then you moved out here, married Dad, and all of a sudden you've got this mother-in-law and father-in-law who are from Kansas, Protestant,
Episcopalian, weren't they?
yeah, and an entirely different culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I remember about Bessie?
I know what I remember. Go ahead.
The only association I've ever had, and I will have the rest of my life, about Bessie is that every time you thought Lindy and I were eating too much, you would say, "You're gonna get fat. You have who to take after." Right?
Amen.
I remember sitting here and you knitting for us, and we would find things,
Get a picture.
get
Find
a picture
Of a
that
sweater.
we liked.
I want this one,
This
Grandma.
one.
I want this one.
This one.
And then you'd make it for
Yeah.
the girls.
I remember I had a pink sweater. Pink, who would have thought? Huh.
Pink.
Well, bully for me.
Tell the girls what Grandpa did for a living.
He was a printer. And
He worked in the composing room.
and he worked in the composing room of the Tribune.
A newspaper. Proofreading.
Proofreading.
it was.
Proofreading.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Because he was good
He
with
was good at it because
punctuation and
Yeah.
spelling and
all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. He was very good at it.
I remember trying to learn how to spell. And he'd say to me, spell story. And I couldn't come up with it. And he'd say, can't you close your eyes and see the word written?
And
No, it's black.
He could.
But he could.
Lou worked at the Tribune for a bazillion years, right?
Yeah,
But
he,
then he did finally quit.
well, he retired. He was
Yeah.
old enough to
But
retire.
before that, he started his own business.
Castle printing.
Oh, well, yeah. That was something on the side because he was working part-time at the Tribune.
But he had a shop full of presses that
We had him
printed all these
downstairs.
things. Yeah. And you ran them.
Yes, I did.
You remember him in the garage?
I remember going to visit him in there, and then the shaking one.
That's right.
He would
know,
put you
Gordon-
on that.
Gordon has that. He
Does he?
He could not let go of it. Gordon kept it.
And you spent
Well, of course
10,000 hours standing in front of that press.
Yes, I did, because that was, I could do that without really having any basic knowledge of printing. Because I could run the machine.
You put the paper in and you
And
took
took
it
it
out. And you put the next paper
That's
in
right.
and you took it out. And he did all the setup
he
and
did
all,
all
took
the
care of the
setting and
machines.
everything.
And the eggs.
Because I
and-
couldn't do it.
She can add in her head almost as fast as I can go on a 10 key. And I'm very proficient on a 10 key.
Well, yes, I know,
You
but
take a
of
column
course
and
now I'm
numbers
out
and
of
she
practice,
just do.
but I could just go
Phenomenal.
right down a column of figures without any trouble at all.
in her mind.
But that was what I did for a living. Yeah, then I
Jamie?
went to the liquor store.
It wasn't just a liquor store, girls, like you're used to a liquor store. This
Oh,
is
no.
Utah liquor.
Now, it's fascinating that we ever sold a bottle of liquor. Because everybody would come in and say, I want They didn't know what they wanted.
And there was nothing on shelves. There was
could see
nothing
nothing.
in view. There
Nothing.
was no liquor to be
It
seen.
was the counter.
Grandma's job in that original liquor store was behind the counter. And they, somebody'd come in and make their list out, and then Grandma would go in the back and she'd pull the bottles off the shelf,
Or out of
put
the
them in
box.
the brown paper bag,
Exactly, yeah.
and then give it to them. So she got to see everything. And
So
that's
did-
Ain't
when,
that wonderful?
that's
Did
when
you learn all
guys-
your different kinds of alcohol and you got very educated about the different
yeah.
brands? And
Yeah, I knew them then.
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't know them all now.
I think I
Well, the
did.
other thing
I
that
like
you guys
that.
got really into were the liqueurs.
But we used to have the little
Oh, the mini bottles.
mini bottles.
Hmm.
And oh, they were just divine. Because you could get what you wanted and never get snickered. I don't ever
I think it
remember
was the
having any surgery on my
second
back.
year
Lindy
I worked at
talks
Sweet
about it,
Candy.
but I don't know anything about
Do you
it.
know how
Yeah,
to?
you did. You did.
And when she went into surgery, Dr. Lamb said we have a 50-50 chance of her being able to walk when she gets out of surgery. It was like it was yesterday. And then exactly 6 months later, they did the first hip replacement. And exactly 6 months later, they did the second hip replacement. And by the second hip replacement was when Daddy was starting to fail mentally.
Yeah.
And I had to write down exactly how to go from
From the
here to
hospital
the
to the-
hospital.
What was it like to work with your husband?
I learned how to keep my big fat mouth shut.
Yeah?
And I highly advise it to anybody who works with their spouse.
They both yelled and screamed at each other. It took 20 seconds, and that was
It
it.
was it. That was totally it.
But we made it for many years together.
He wouldn't go like this and tap a cigarette. He'd hold it and use his little finger, and his little finger would knock off the ashes.
I don't remember
Don't
that.
you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
And he had these beautiful, long, graceful hands. His hands were showed a lot of expression in his hands.
I remember the table and all of the glasses.
Uh-huh.
In
And
this
there-
back bedroom.
And there were
Grandma
glasses for the kids, and there were
switched
glasses
that
for
to
the
a dining
adults.
room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there were the 5 of us, and Grandma and Grandpa, and the 4 Deppies. So that was 11 people around that table
Yeah. And
And
we
the-
had it all open.
in the back room.
What happened after dinner was that
Yes, after
Then-
Everyone.
after dinner in that room with the whole family, and then someone would get up and get a bottle of something, and then
That's
the
right.
adults would all get a little bit, and then they
Yeah,
would
that's
talk
right.
about it, and
And you
then
got to
try
taste
something
it, didn't you?
different. And, well, we probably did. We probably tasted it once, and then asked if we could go watch TV, but.
That's all right.
You came to Grandma's house for the wide selection
Oh,
of cereal.
yeah.
And the cupboard felt like it was
Really
30
up there.
floors up.
Oh yeah, you couldn't
And
get it
you're just like,
yourself. You just had to
I can't
crick
read
your
the
neck up
books.
there and
Yeah,
try to
it's
see
got
what was up there
that.
'cause it was good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh my gosh, you
This was
can.
it.
Well, yes, I see. We have a few, but not as many as we used to.
No, I used to run the whole thing, and your little head was way down here, and it was just so intimidating because you wanted to get it right. You wanted to make sure it was right and it was what you wanted.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Now, here's Grandma's kitchen. Here's the refrigerator with all the family photos on it. And she has a little cupboard on the other side with some storage because this kitchen has no storage. And there's the kitchen window, and here's the table where everybody sat, which is teeny now, but it was enough for a family of 4 in the old days. And this is the entire kitchen counter. Right there, you saw it, all of it, right there.
Cooking right there.
If you're going to prepare Thanksgiving dinner, that's how much room you have, right there.
And it worked.
That's the whole thing. And that's where you keep your dishes. And this is where you keep the rest of your pantry stuff.
I made this. You take the little plastic pellets and you pour them in the right section, the right color in the right section, and then your mom puts it in the oven and bakes it on some foil. And the foil's never totally flat, which is why it's kind of crinkly on the back.
This is
I want
the
you.
clock that Grandpa made from a kit.
Grandpa
I think
saved
it
this
belongs to
phone,
them.
right?
Yeah, the
Yes, Grandpa
phone
saved-
Gordon desperately wants, but that's the only thing Gordon wants.
That came from Kansas. And here's
Yes,
a
bring it to the
cute
board.
picture of Lindy and Grandma and
That's
me.
cool. No problem.